Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here. So maybe you are a whale or you're a free-to-play player saving up a lot of your gems and you're thinking of pulling her Eidolons. Or perhaps you're just a free-to-play player and you heard a lot of rumors online all over the internet saying that her Eidolons are so good, this character is so strong. I'm going to be sharing some of my opinions on this amazing character, very strong defensive units, and whether her Eidolons are worth it or not. For the most part of this video, I'll remain unbiased, talking about each Eidolon and their pros and cons and which one might be a good stopping point if you ever do want to break the bank. I'll also be sharing with you some of my biased opinions towards the end of the video for those of you who want my take on it as well. I'll give you a hint, I have her at E0 currently and I likely will be staying at E0 for the rest of the banner. But for those of you who want individual analysis on each of the Eidolons, I think the TLDR out of all of the Eidolons, the one that is like most worth it if it could ever be justified to have Eidolons, of course will be E1. I'm very happy that they put like one of the best ones here because crit damage 30% is a very strong thing. Knowledge effect, for those of you who don't know, is basically her skill ability, which is going to be up most of the time to have that apportionment of damage, that HP buffing for your teammates, and crit rate buffing as well. So she buffs HP, buffs crit rate, takes their damage, and now with Eidolon 1, she will buff crit damage, which is insane as well. For those of you who don't know, Eidolons, when you have them, the damage increase is usually around 20 to 25% for but roughly average. Considering this applies to your other teammates, I think is a ton of value, in my opinion at least. So very nice that they put it at E1 instead of gating it behind like higher Eidolons like E2 and etc. Although I think it's really strong, but probably if you were a free-to-play player, you don't have that many characters in the game, you likely would value a little bit more roster depth instead of min-maxing your stats. This could always be gotten for a later date, a rerun, if you were a smaller spender or free-to-play. Of course, if you have more money, more resources, by all means, I think this is insane good value. Probably would be where I would recommend to stop for majority of people other than free-to-play players or whales. So next up, we have E2, Optimus Felix. This one is more or less like a future-proofing kind of thing. When your characters are hit by a killing blow, so that attack, that instance of attack, if let's say it's a AoE one-shot from the Swamp Disaster or something like that, none of your teammates dies, they all restore immediately with HP 70%. A very good like backup plan, very similar to what we see, for example, in Japat, as well as Bailu's Revive, just that of course now it's for the whole team. I think that this is more of a panic button kind of thing rather than actual key importance. For those of you who don't know, if whenever you're facing a difficulty, like maybe your characters got one-shotted, you could just alternate F4, that Memory of Chaos run, or if you are at a boss stage in the Swamp Disaster, alternate F4 or just close it. Most of us will actually get to restart the battle. It's like a secret cheat code or restart button that you have, which will save you like $600 or 2 limited 5 stars to get this. Of course, the argument is this is like future-proofing. If one day we have monsters that one-shot very often and revives become a lot of part of a lot of characters' kit, then we could argue that this will be very future-proof for a particular character. But I think by the time the game reaches a state where one-shotting your characters is an issue, I think we'll have bigger problems than thinking about whether to pull for Fusion's Eidolons, if I were to be really honest. E3 on the other hand, I think this is the stronger out of the 3 and 5, the just basic stats. Ultimate basic attack is just damage for her. This one at least gives crit rate, it gives damage reduction, or rather max HP increase and stuff like that. I think this is much more solid if out of these two that you want to go for, but then again they are just like additional multiplier stats. E4 on the other hand, this is when you have your skill active and your allies are attacked, she regenerates energy. For those of you who don't know, her energy cost is actually very high out of a lot of defensive characters that we have. Her ultimate 135 energy cost, if you compare it to other characters like Japat, his is only 100, Natasha is even lower. For example here at 90, for those of us who want like a feel in comparison to it. The new Links is also about 100, and I think Bailu, let me just see Bailu real quick. Yeah, it's also 100. So her restoration is also is actually pretty high to get this ultimate. Of course, the reason why I compare it to defensive characters is because this gives her that trigger count for HP restore, which is kind of like the same thing because it's like an emergency heal for her. You want it up more often to get those charges. So this does mitigate a lot of that, allowing you to reallocate a lot of your energy restoration stats if you're running a link rope, maybe towards more HP stats, or get her uptime on her ultimate more so she can burst and do more damage. Either one. That becomes more relevant when you're going for E6. E6 turns her ultimate into really a very strong DPS potential, because any HP that is lost by your teammates while her skill is active, it'll all be like tallied up, and then when she uses her ultimate, it will deal a lot of that more damage. Very good if you want to turn like a defensive unit into a more offensive unit as well. So turning her into a sub DPS, really fulfilling on almost every single role. Very destruction-like, similar to Blade in my opinion. So this combos nicely because you get the uptime on your ultimate more with this energy regeneration, and this just bursts more often as well using your current build. So that is up to E6. If you in my opinion, I think E1 is probably the best bang for buck in terms of value. E6 changes her style very significantly, and I think E2 is a luxury. So that's like a very quick summary of all those if you are whale and you're thinking of going a little bit more deeper. So that is for the whale. Now comes my biased opinion. I think for the most part, I already talked about it a little bit with E1. If you are a free-to-play player right now, your main option or the main trouble that you have probably will be looking for a second very strong, like one person sustain your whole unit. So if you could use that E1 instead for a new character like Luota, or maybe a new character that you really like Jingliu, Topaz that's coming up in future, I think you should spend your resources there rather than going for an additional 30% crit damage. At this point in the game, I don't think it's ever worth it for any free-to-play player to be chasing Eidolons. You can go in future, like 1 year in, when you already have a roster, for example like this, with many 5-star characters and you don't really have room for a new one, or maybe there's a lot of rerun banners in future and you don't really like any of those reruns at all. I think that's when it's good to consider Eidolons if we ever do want to consider Eidolons. And that is just my biased opinion, at least what I think for most free-to-play players. For the most part, I think the biggest consideration would, for most people as of now, would be, would you actually want to pull for her signature light cone? She has already shut her eyes. If you already have, for example, her at E0, you decided now that you don't want to pull for Eidolons. What is the case? Will you actually want to pull for her? I've done a very quick video on it already, which I highly encourage you click over here, where we talk about her light cone and my thoughts on it as well. But give you a little hint, I'm not pulling for a light cone either. More thoughts in that video. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.